Continuing on, we're talking about the properties of water today. So I wanted to show you three different conceptions of water. So let's suppose we have a mole of water, which would be, Avogadro's number of waters floating around, which is actually going to take up much less than a liter. So just a little bit of water will give us, billions and billions of these tiny water molecules. But if they're floating around in a normal solution of water, and then we have just pure water, what would they look like? What would water look like? Would they all kind of line up neatly like this? Now we know some chemicals do have nice alignment, and even in biology, we'll be learning about some chemicals that keep a nice structure like this. Would they be randomly floating around in all orientations? Some facing at some angles, some kind of turned to the right, some floating upside down. Or would they actually all have a structure like this? Go ahead and pause for a second and think. What do we think about the structure of water and the chemistry of water that could tell us? Well, for those of you who said that it would actually be number 2, you're probably thinking of water vapor. So water vapor, like most gases, you hope probably remember, they actually diffuse and move around randomly. So they could be in any orientation. So this would be in the gas state. But the liquid state of water is actually going to look like this. Now, what's the difference between 1 and 3? Well, if you look carefully, you'll notice that these are all lined up in the same orientation. These actually have the hydrogens of one water molecule being close to the oxygens of another. And thinking back to what you knew about chemistry, this is important because of something called the polarity of water. So water has an oxygen side, which is very electronegative, and a hydrogen side, which is electropositive. And so we have the interactions we have an attraction between the hydrogens of one water molecule and the oxygens of another. And actually, we can get some very interesting configurations because of this. If we throw in things like ions or other things, we can get some very interesting geometry going on, which we're going to talk about. But the first thing to keep in mind is all of these properties of water that we're going to talk about right now have to do with this polarity, the fact that water has an oxygen side, which has extra electrons. That's what gives it the negative charge. It has a electron poor side that is positively charged. And as we know from our chemistry classes, those different charges is what drives the chemistry of water. Now going to here, we notice that these properties in of themselves don't seem that compelling. Lots of molecules are polar. So what makes water so special? Well, actually, this polarity leads to something unique in water called hydrogen bonding. So water has just the right amount of polarity, just the right amount of properties in the liquid state so that it can have something called hydrogen bonding, which is this unique interactions between the hydrogens of one water and the oxygens of another. And even though other chemicals can do hydrogen bonding, the hydrogen bonding in water is unique and leads to some unique set of properties that make it ideal for life. So let's talk about those emergent or surprising properties that you would not be able to predict just by saying water is polar. Actually, we get some very surprising conclusions that you should know. First is that water is cohesive. And this is the least surprising. Of course, if we have lots of attraction between all the little molecules, of course, we would expect water to be cohesive. But actually, it's so cohesive, it's surprisingly cohesive that we have surface tension, which is rather unique. Many liquids do not have surface tension, but what that means, which I'll show you in class, is water pours itself together and it forms a layer along the outside, which applies a force, a greater force on other objects. So surface tension has to do with the tension that is unique to the surface of water. And lastly, water is adhesive, and this relates to it being the universal solvent. And this is slightly so cohesive, co means together. So this has to do with the properties of water being attracted to each other. Adhesive, water is attracted to other polar and ionic compounds. And so it's able to hold on to those things. And you see water adheres to other things. And then lastly, because of this unique properties, it ends up being the universal solvent. Let me try to spell universal right. Sorry about that, going quickly. And in biology, this is really the case. It doesn't mean that it can dissolve anything, but it does mean that in terms of biology, water is what makes everything happen. So everything needs to be dissolved in water. Water is a reactant in many of the different reactions we're going to talk about in dehydration synthesis. And all of the things that we're going to talk about, water is absolutely necessary. So these are the surprising, interesting results of the unique chemical properties of water. That's it for today. Talk to you later.